This week's Parsha, Bo, relays the latter part of the 10 plagues in Egypt, minus the last. Egypt is presented as the antithesis of the Jewish worldview, which we hyperbolically symbolize every week through Shabbat. Egypt, Mitzrayim, is a truly narrow place where we were enslaved to the whip and the whim of a tyrant who thought himself a living God and was treated as such by all around him. Egypt was an entire society that depended on the labor and misery of a people in chains. But what the Egyptians did not realize was that slavery was as harmful to them as it was to the Israelite slaves themselves. It was harmful because it corrupted them. It corrupted them morally. This system which would trample real lives for the sake of vanity, for the sake of gain. But the Egyptians were born into it, benefited from it, and so they supported a self-destructive practice that would soon cause them discomfort, then pain, and eventually the very lives of an entire generation. Pharaoh and the Egyptian people are looked upon by Jewish tradition not as evil per se, but more as tragic figures along the lines of Macbeth. We, hearing the story year after year, want to call out to them, "Stop! Don't you see you are heading towards disaster? For God's sake, cut your losses, adapt to the changes before it's too late." Pharaoh himself is not portrayed as a stupid man, but rather one who is so vested in being right that he self-destructs and takes many lives with him. All this, despite all the evidence that mounts in front of his face, from blood to frogs to lice to boils to hail to beasts and darkness, despite his own advisors warning him that this new challenge they faced was unprecedented and could not be treated as business as usual. It's by Elohim he. This is the finger of God. Despite his own people seeing the signs all around them and pleading with Pharaoh for change, Ad matai yihiyezeh, how long will this be a snare for us? Send out the people that they may serve Adonai, their God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is lost? This is what is meant by Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Vayechazek lev. Even as he was the supreme slave master, he himself was supremely enslaved by his refusal to change. In short, Pharaoh was enslaved by himself. In Jewish tradition, this type of self-destructive behavior, continued even with open eyes, is called the Yetzer Hara, the evil impulse. The Talmud profoundly describes its two faces. Rav Asai said, "At first the evil impulse is as thin as a spider's gossamer, but in the end, it is as thick as a cart rope." Rava said, "At first the evil impulse is called a wayfarer, then a guest, then finally a master. Modern scholar Rabbi Jonathan Sachs suggests that evil has two faces. The first, turned to the outside world, is what it does to its victim. The second, turned within, is what it does to its perpetrator. Evil traps the evildoer in its mesh. Slowly but surely, he or she loses freedom and becomes not evil's master, but its slave. Year after year, we learn and teach one another the lessons of the Israelite Exodus that we are commanded in Torah never to forget. That freedom is not a moment in time, but a continuous set of choices that we must make again and again and again. That freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want and whenever you want it. Nay, that's anarchy. But rather, freedom is a self-policed limiting of choice for the common good, sinking us with moral purpose. A free society is a moral achievement. And perhaps most importantly, that there is a higher power beyond the delusion of idols or tyrants that enables us to tap into all that is good in the world. But we also can learn lessons from Pharaoh and the Egyptians. That we have cancerous practices within our own lives and our society that may be extremely difficult to change, but to do nothing is a choice of eventual destruction. Not just our own, but for those around us whom we hold most dear. Most of us can see Egypt just by looking closely into the mirror. Egypt may be a vice that we rationalize, knowing in our heart of hearts that it shackles us like a slave. Egypt may be a relationship that we know is toxic, one that demeans and shames us, putting our lives in danger. Egypt may be a shameful behavior, a collar that we have grown to accept with time. As a society, we might walk like an Egyptian when it comes to viewing our policy towards gun control, the environment, or how we demonize anyone who is on the other side of the political fence. Will we be like Pharaoh of the hardened heart? Or will we heed our own voices, calling out from across the generations of Passover Seders, stop. Don't you see we're heading towards disaster? For God's sake, cut your losses, adapt to the changes before it's too late. I know what you are hearing in this pause. A scared voice inside you that has been convinced that you are powerless. It whispers to you words of paralysis and doubt. What can I do? I'm just one person. I don't have the strength. I don't have the skills. I don't have the words or an audience to receive them. Like our Exodus story, these too are the doubts that Moses expressed when God called to him from the burning bush, saying, I've heard my people crying out, and I'm sending you to do my work. Our Torah tells us that God knew Moses' true potential. God knew Moses' true potential better than Moses did himself. And that Moses' task was not only to take our people out of slavery, Dayenu, but to begin with each of us the journey from that narrow place where option seems not to exist and into the wide expanse of the wilderness where everything is possible. It's the same for us today. Here. Now. We are Moses. Called against our doubts to engage, to participate, to lead. We are the Israelites, promised a partnership with God to walk forward in sacred work to bring justice and mercy into the world. But so too, our Judaism tells us, we are in danger of being like Pharaoh and the Egyptians, warned against our worst enemy, ourselves. With a profound simplicity, Rabbi Tarfon uttered this statement that spans the practical and theological. He said, "It is not for you to complete the task, but neither are you free to desist from it." At this liminal point in history, the Shabbat in January, facing what was and what could still yet be, the question presses us uncomfortably, even painfully. What will we do with this time? We began this journey from Egypt more than 33 centuries ago. And it's fair to say that we are still moving towards Canaan today, one foot in front of another, one step at a time. Each of us with the potential to emancipate ourselves from bondage, to become truly free. Shabbat Shalom.